7 days. Hi guys, so before we get into it, a very quick disclaimer that you'll find all my other Ring reviews in my Ring playlist, and there will be spoilers today. Come on, you must know how this film ends by now. This is literally the 4th time I've reviewed this same story, but Ring 2002 is my favourite Ring film. It's the first one that I ever saw. For many years, it was the only one that I'd seen. It's only been in recent times that I've started checking out some of the other films that this series has to offer. But I predicted before a single review was done here that this would end up coming top of my eventual ranking. And having revisited the film the other night for the first time in years, I still stand by that prediction. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that I'm an English-speaking person, so obviously I'm going to gravitate towards the English-speaking version of Ring. Well, I reject that, because if we talk about the film series Rec for a minute, the original Rec was a Spanish film with English subtitles, and then eventually the Americans remade it, they retitled it as Quarantine. But I prefer the Spanish version. I mean, the American version is competent, but it doesn't really add anything to what the Spanish did. So if I want to watch the original Rec, I will always go with the Spanish version. But in this case, I think the Americans nailed it. I think this is by far the best that this story has to offer. I honestly don't care whether a film is a foreign language film or an English-speaking film. I will judge it on its merits, and it just so happens that in this one case, I absolutely prefer the American version. It was directed by Gore Verbinski. He went on to do the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy, a bunch of films that I can enjoy and have seen multiple times, but obviously very, very different from Ring. I'm only going to name one person from the cast today, just so we can push on a little bit, and that would obviously be the star Naomi Watts. Someone you wouldn't say is an A-list household name, probably higher B-list, but she's had an amazing career. I didn't even know she was British until I looked at her wiki the other day. I mean, she's from Shoreham in Kent. I never would have guessed that. It always amazes me how many British actors and actresses become so good at doing the American accent. I've tried in front of a mirror. It's bloody hard. I can't do it. But Naomi Watts is quite a well-respected actress in the industry, I think. I don't think she did anything in horror apart from Ring. And I only think she did this film probably, and I'm only guessing here, but I just don't think she's the sort of actress who back in the noughties would have done something like, say, Saw 2 or Hostel. You know, I think The Ring, when it came out, it had a degree of respectability about it that not all horror films would have had. I mean, if you look at the structure of this film, it starts off with a kill with Sadako, or Samara as she's now known, and then we get like an hour and a half of investigative journalism. It's almost like a mystery film, and then it's only at the end that Samara turns up again. This is not normally done in horror when you've got such a famous killer, but this one Ring film does feel like it has reach beyond the genre. You know, if this came out today, I could easily imagine someone like Emily Blunt agreeing to play Rachel Keller. I could absolutely see that 100%. But I only think that respectability is with this one particular film, not the franchise as a whole. Like, as someone in the comments pointed out the other day, eventually we get to Sadako versus The Grudge, and Jesus, I think I'm going to need a bottle of whiskey when I come to that one. So what is it about this version of Ring which makes it so much better than all the ones that have come before? Well, just about everything, to be honest, apart from one little thing towards the end of the movie, and I'll come back to that. But for now, let's talk about the prologue. And this is the ultimate version of the opening kill to Ring. The highs and lows that these two teenage girls go through before Samara turns up. I mean, you basically get an entire roller coaster ride, self-contained within the prologue. There's so much to enjoy. And there's a new thing now where Samara makes puddles whenever she's walking around outside the television set, which is a brilliant new addition. It just makes the whole thing even creepier. I mean, if you're a character in one of these films now and you spot a puddle in your hallway, you might want to double check just how long it's been since you watched the videotape. But this kill, it deserves to be talked about in the same breath as the opening kill of Scream. And I think the reason why I think of Scream is because it's it's sort of similar in that, we've got teenage girls home alone while the parents are conveniently out. And the two films are reasonably close together in era. Scream came out in 96, Ring in 2002. After the prologue here, Rachel Keller turns up and she starts her long investigation into Samara. And again, this is just so much better than what we've come before. All the scenes follow on logically from each other. I can understand the leaps that Rachel is taking better than I ever could with the previous investigations in other versions. She does that thing in this where she goes on the actual videotape and goes through shot for shot, and she's picking out possible clues as to where she has to go next. And the crucial clue is actually off the screen. She does a bit of a Blade Runner. The only thing she doesn't do is actually talk to the computer, which would have been awesome. Imagine if she'd been sat there like, more to the right, further, go further away from the image, explore new territories of the image. Yes, there, that's the clue, freeze frame that. I mean, she basically does that, but without talking to the computer. I don't know if you could actually do this with a photo image, just keep looking for stuff that's not actually there, but it's really cool. And I think the crucial clue is, it's a lighthouse, that's right. And then about halfway to the island, when she's on the boat or the ship, we get our first indication, really, as to just how much extra cash they had for this movie compared to previous versions. There's this spectacular scene where a horse goes crazy in Rachel's presence, and it bolts its way through a ship, sprints past a load of cars, and then jumps off the side. It's an expensive-looking scene. They've clearly done some stuff with horses there, and added some CGI, but it's a really sad scene when the horse dies, and also a scary scene as well. Now, there's a part of the film later on where they've, again, spent a bit of money, shall we say, and it's not quite worked out as well, and I'm coming to my one criticism of the film here. So, in any Ring film, there comes a moment where Rachel has to be lowered down into the well on a rope, but because the budget was higher for this version of Ring, they've clearly thought to themselves, you know what? Let's not lower her down on a rope. Let's just throw her down the well. We'll have a big dramatic fall. We'll maybe get a stunt actress or some CGI or whatever, but let's spend some cash. That's what they've thought, but it's backfired a little bit, because this little fall that Rachel takes, it's a stretch to think that she could tumble that way and not hit her head on the way down into this well, because the tube is quite thin. I mean, I could buy that Samara could fall down, being a little girl, and not hit her head, but for someone as tall as Rachel, it's pushing it a little bit. Now, it's possible she could survive that fall, but the trouble is, when this happens in the movie, I then spent the next 5 minutes pondering whether it's viable that she could survive that, instead of just focusing on what's coming next. That's the issue here, but it's one tiny little problem with Ring, and to be honest, I don't think most people would even spot this. Now, I did hint in some of my previous Ring reviews that in this American version, Samara doesn't get her powers until she goes down the well. Technically, I was wrong to say that, because clearly in this film, Samara as a little girl has some kind of psychic power where she can get into her parents' heads, get into their daydreams, their dreams, their thoughts, and just generally drive them potty. But we're still not talking about the same sort of powers that she had in Ring Birthday, where she was running around the woods like some kind of supernatural Terminator, giving 8-10 people heart attacks. So spiritually, I still maintain that I was correct, but I just wanted to quickly address the point. I love the backstory in this version, though. This is the best backstory of Ring. I'd completely forgotten that the Morgans don't actually sire Samara themselves. So what they actually do is go on some random holiday and then just come back with the child, but we never get told where they got her from. It's kept a mystery, but I like that. So we're just left to our imagination. We can think to ourselves, well, did they find her in like a bin in the middle of a California theme park, or the jungles of Cambodia? We just don't know. I guess if there was going to be a prequel in this timeline of Ring, it would have to be about the Morgans' journey abroad and how they managed to get Samara. Maybe they could hear a rumour in some random village that there's a witch doctor giving away a child somewhere in the jungle, and so they end up going on like a cannibal Holocaust type adventure, and they only just get out with their lives, and Samara, of course, and then they could end up back home, and the final scene could be sort of like Well, all's well that ends well. Our lives should be plain sailing from here, right? And then roll credits. That'd be a terrible movie, wouldn't it? No, I don't want any more Ring prequels. No, thank you. Just to name a couple more things that I like about this version, though. The videotape. I've only really skirted around that so far in this review, but this is the best videotape of any that we've seen up until now in this series. It's basically like the 98 version but extended. There's more bits to it, and throughout the film Rachel is constantly seeing things that we've seen in the videotape but in real life, and it's kind of freaky. And the sound effects as well, brilliant. Like whenever Samara turns up here or the videotape's on, you get these weird little effects that are better than anything that's been done before in the series. As soon as I heard them the other night, I thought, oh wow, it's been so long since I've heard those effects, but they're so cool. And I love the way this film looks as well, the cinematography. There's so many scenes, even the quieter scenes, like when Rachel's just sat in a waiting room. There's just a real quality to how it looks, and very rainy film as well. Lots of use of rain. Here's the thing about rain in real life, right? So I don't like rain, but when I say that, I mean the normal type of rain, the normal volumes of rain. When it comes to torrential downpours, I kind of like that type of rain because I kind of find it really beautiful. I'm being serious. As long as I'm on the warmer side of the window pane, of course, I don't necessarily want to be out in it, but there's lots of use of torrential downpours in Ring, and it just gives the film extra atmosphere for me. Like constantly throughout this film, you get rain in random moments, and I just find that it's a really big, strong characteristic of this version. Continuing on the theme of how this film looks, I made a little bit of an error in judgment the other night when I watched this, because I got my DVD copy out of the cupboard. I probably had this for going on 20 years. I've maybe watched it 4 or 5 times in that time period. I get it out the cupboard every few years. I'm amazed by it and then put it back in the cupboard and rinse and repeat. But I think this might be the final time I watched this particular disc, because there were several times when I was watching it the other night where I saw just how great certain scenes had been directed, and I thought, you know what, I need to be watching this in HD now or 4K. It's the sort of movie that's so well made, it deserves to have that upscale. So sadly for this, as much as I love this version, it must be one of my oldest DVDs that I've got. Like an old dog, it just needs to be put to sleep now, I think, sadly. But anyway, let's get to the bag of terror and find out how I'm going to score this. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. Is there something else? 5 bloody axes out of 5. I can't even carry them all. I'm not used to carrying 5 at one time, because most films get like a lot less than this. But here we are, 5 out of 5. I can put them down now. I don't know how many times I've given 5 out of 5 since I started doing reviews on this channel. It can't be more than maybe 10 times, surely. It's kind of rare, you know. So yeah, this is a strange occasion, but I'm pleased to be able to give the masterpiece rating. I did consider giving it like 4.5 out of 5, just because the film isn't strictly an original film, you know, it's copying something else. But then I thought, you know what, don't be a spoil sport, just give it the full 5 out of 5, you know you want to. And that is what I have done. So at this stage, obviously this film is leading the pack in terms of the films that we've discussed so far. Next time, it's another American one. It's Ring 2, a direct sequel to this one. Naomi Watts did come back for one sequel, bizarrely, but I can't remember that much about it. I did watch it once, but I was drifting in and out of sleep. It was not a good time to put a film on from what I can remember. But anyway, we'll come to that next time. In the meantime, cheerio, bye-bye.